I'd like to say is that MakerDAO is a beast to study. It's been really hard for the three of us to get our head around the idea behind. We interacted a lot with the community online, the founders, and all the community that is trying to develop this product. So it is still possible that we make mistakes when we explain this, and it's obviously possible that we won't have all the answers that we'd like about the product. That being said, we're going to try to do our best to explain this, because in the end what's going to happen is that we're going to try to explain or to figure how a central bank plus a normal bank, a credit bank, is working. They themselves realized that they were reinventing how a bank should work, but in a decentralized fashion. So the first thing they figured out was the problem, right? So what they wanted to solve as a problem, and gave birth to MakerDAO, was the fact that if we are really going to use cryptocurrency in everyday life, like to pay bills, to buy stuff on the street, or between companies or whatever, if we're going to use this for real life activities, then this volatility that we observe in Bitcoin, in Ether, or every other cryptocurrency, things I assume we also like for the reasons, but this is not functioning in everyday life type of activities. And the other point, which is not the less important one, I think, is the fact that people running our economy today, the way central banks work, for instance, the people taking decisions on those things have no skin in the game, which means that whatever the decision they take, there is no real downside to them, personally or economically, or their reputation. It's their job, right? But not if things go wrong, there's no real consequences. Okay? So, and those two things are what gave birth to MakerDAO as a concept. But okay, let's try to build in a decentralized fashion a token which lives on Ethereum because it's easier, because it's a smart contract, and which price remains stable through time. Therefore, I can buy that token and then do whatever I want with it in every application I like, because I can trust the system that it's always going to remain around the same price. In summary, this is what it is. Okay, in summary, what are the characteristics that we are after here? So we want low volatility, as I explained. We still want a free floating currency, which means that economy fluctuates. That's a thing, right? And so we want our stable token to be a reflect of that fluctuation, but no volatility as strong as we can see in Bitcoin or Ether, but still some change through times is acceptable. Obviously, no central authority, so no central point of control or authority to take decisions on this. It should be working in a decentralized fashion, and therefore things should be automated as the more the better. The people that are going to take decisions in the Maker ecosystem have to have the skin in the game, and we'll see how this has been done. And of course, to do that, to let the people take decisions, we will need to get our hands on governance, which is an all of the topic of blockchain nowadays that is, along with cryptoeconomics, very, very important, but also very, very hard. And we can describe and talk about that in later meetings. Just a quick comparison between how things are done today in fiat currency, euro, dollar, whatever, and in cryptocurrency. So the institution that is doing that today, looking at volatility, are central banks, or in the cryptocurrency space, companies, right, that issue tokens, or exchanges that exchange tokens between them and with users. The way it's done is by a monetary policy in the fiat currency world, and in the cryptocurrency space is done through a model by which you issue a token, rules they are being issued, what are their consequences and so on. And then with exchanges you've got speculation. So this is what in the end decide on the price of your token.
It's okay.
All right. So right now, as you know, there is generally low volatility in fiat currencies. I know this is not the case in every part of the world, but generally speaking, fiat currencies are stable, where in cryptocurrency it's a high volatility. Or you might say, why is that the case? Well, imagine that you are going on a boat in the ocean. And this is the analogy Antonopoulos is doing in a recent video he posted, which I think is very interesting. So imagine that you go on the sea on a very small boat. Whatever kind of waves come at you is going to make you move a lot if you have a very small barge or whatever. But if you have that big frontliner that goes from one continent to the other, which would be in the case of fiat currencies, you would really need a very big wave, to feel that movement from the ocean to on you, right? And so it's a matter of volume, basically. In fiat currency, we have so much volume being traded all day long that it doesn't really matter in the end, right? Where in fiat currency, which is, by the way, approximately 0.01% of the world economy right now, so it's very low volume, so whatever changes happen during the day will affect you a lot. And finally, governance, right? It's a closed one and private one in our world, in the crypto space. The first question I'd like to answer is what stability means. So, as I said, it's not going to be pegged, as they say, to the dollar, for instance, or always reflect the price of the dollar or the euro. It's a free-floating currency, which means that they take an objective, which in this case are special drawing rights, a thing issued by the IMF, and that represents the world economy. There are 5 fiat currencies in this basket, and according to the weight of that economy in the world economy, you've got those percentages, and therefore you have a unit for every currency. You have a unit of SDR. And this is what Maker takes as a stability reference point, right? So the price of our token, our stable token, should always be around the price of SDR, because this reflects the world economy. Okay? So far so good? Great. Then, if we want to make this attractive, well, who is going to play this game? And you've got 2 sides of the equation here. The first one is this, by the way. DAI is the name of the stablecoin, right? And so you will want people to issue DAI. You want people to make DAI, the stablecoin, available. And the way this is done in Maker is, if you know a little bit about trading, it's a way to get exposure on a token that you might already have, right? So if I want to go margin long or margin short on a token that I have, say Ether, this is a financial instrument, and we're going to see, that I can use to get exposure. So I can trade more money than I actually have, because I have bought something with it, which is a financial product. So this is one thing. You don't need to know everything. Myself, I don't know a lot about trading, but keep in mind that you need something attractive to people that want to make money with margin trading. And on the other side, you will need people to want to get the stablecoin and to take advantage of its low volatility characteristics. Okay? So this is the use of the stablecoin, and this is the way you issue the stablecoin and make it available to the market. Next, what are the ingredients? So what are we going to need in this project to fabricate a stablecoin? The first one is a way to issue it. And the way you issue a stablecoin is by giving it value. So you cannot create a token out of the thin air. If it doesn't have value in the first place, it's not worth anything. And the way we do that is by locking collateral assets. So that can be Ether, DGX Gold, Bitcoin, whatever digital asset, crypto asset, will be used here as a collateral that is going to be locked in a smart contract. And then you will be able to issue a certain amount of DAI, with that collateral. Okay? So you say, okay, I have 100 Ether here. I will send that to a smart contract, and then Maker will say, okay, so this is locked. I cannot access it, but you can no longer access it yourself neither. But because you locked it, you can now issue, I don't know, 50 DAI, for instance. Okay? We'll get down to the question later. Just remind this for now. So you lock something that has value in order to issue now a stablecoin. So there are a bunch of smart contracts over there to make this possible. Then you will need market prices. So that's going to be for the SDR, but also all the parameters that we're going to use in the system, and feed all that information to the system. And then finally, and this is done through oracles. And then finally, because we still have that issue of stability that we've not resolved yet, and this is where NPR come into place. Okay. So we have now two tokens. First one was the stablecoin itself, which is DAI. And in order to manage its volatility that could happen, we're going to use another token which also has value because it has been sold to investors as a reserve. So this is a reserve of value, always accessible to the system, Maker system, if something goes wrong. And we'll see what can happen later, but this is a reserve that can be used to maintain the token stable through time. Okay? So far, any questions?
I just would like to point one thing. This CDP product is actually how banks create debt. This is, you're creating money, DAI, okay, you're issuing tokens, and tying them to a collateral. When I have a mortgage, what they do is they ask for some, how's it called? Well, from some other money to give me the loan. So this CDP is actually how banks create debt, and this CDP has to do as well with risk and all that stuff. But that's all. My point is that this is actually how banks are working. I just love this slide, even though it's a bit tricky.
It's actually a good point. The only difference here is that it is a debt, as Antonio said, but it's a debt that has already been paid for.
That's a really good one.
Because remember, you've locked collateral into this debt issuing mechanism. So the debt is already paid because it has collateral in it. So whatever goes wrong, I can close this and I still get the collateral back.
So something like the bailout cannot happen.
Yeah.
Because you will have always the money there. You cannot create money out of thin air and saying, okay, I have 10, I will lend 90. You cannot, because you need collateral to create that debt.
It's the first safety mechanism.
And you even have to back it up with more. So if you want to die for 100 Ether, you have to back it up with 110 Ether.
Exactly.
There's a question.
Let's see. Okay.
So, would you say that this is like fractional reserve banking but with real collaterals behind it? Like going to the bank example? Like if this is how banks create debt through the fractional reserve. So would this be the fractional reserve of the blockchain but with a real collateral behind it?
It's with things that have value and that are locked. So you can't
But things
Except
that,
the system, nobody else can access it anymore. So it's always going to be available, whatever happens in the later ecosystem.
but what is the value of the collateral? Because what?
It has the value it has. So if you put in Ether, it's going to be the...
Yeah, today the value of Ether is 300 euros, tomorrow is 200.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very interesting point that we'll see later in the presentation. All the scenarios that can happen with the collateral. But it's a good point. So what else?
Yeah, as we've seen before, I talked about oracles, if you remember, the centralized and the decentralized ones, and I would like to know which ones they use in the MakerDAO.
Yeah, this is actually a critical part because nobody owns the truth and nobody runs Maker as a company. It means that you're going to have to feed market prices to the system in a decentralized fashion, and this is done as Sandra said through oracles. So right now the way they do it is by multiplying the number of oracles they have 12 right now running in different parts of the world, and feeding the same information 12 times. And so this is a way to trust 12 different sources, independent sources of information at all time. And then there are a bunch of criteria, technical stuff, whereby if something goes wrong for one oracle, this can be put away. Say I don't trust it anymore. And if, say, there's less than 3, I think it's trustful for now. If it's less than 3, then we have a sort of limbo mode that is activated in Maker, which can, if it stays longer than X amount of time, can go to a global settlement. So if this were the case, what would happen is that all the DAI would be destroyed, and everybody that puts in collateral would get it back. So the worst case scenario really here is that the DAI is destroyed and you get the money back that you put in the first place. Okay, so there is a governance model that will vote on the risk parameters, because as you can already see, the volatility that you mentioned from the collateral, but also up to what point do I accept debt being issued? Is that infinite, or if this has to be limited somehow? What are the actual price that I'm going to set for the DAI in order to get it back on tracks if it deviates? So there are many risk parameters that exist and that NPR holders will vote on in order to make things stable as well.
Just one side note. These risk parameters here are actually the business of the banks. It's something that they don't tell, how they measure the risk that they are putting by acquiring some collaterals. But here, these parameters are open. You can see them. There are no secrecy on that. So that's why the governance model, and Laurent will go afterwards on that, this is so radical and so disruptive, because it's the first open bank. Really, it's open. Everybody can see what's going on in there.
And those are the decisions that the people working there, so to speak, that owns NPR, those are the decisions they're going to take. And so you will know at every point in time what the people working in this ecosystem are doing. If they start accepting, I don't know, the useless coin as a collateral, that obviously will work, then you might say, well, I don't trust those people anymore, and so you won't use them anymore. Or they will accept the consequences of having accepted that token in the first place, and therefore we lose money as a risk. So let's get down to it. The first thing is to make the stablecoin accessible for the market, right? So I have money and I want to issue a DAI, right? I'm going to do that by locking a higher amount of collateral in a smart contract, which is a CDP, a collateral debt position. And this is by approximately between 100 and 300, depends, percent more Ether or Bitcoin or digit gold or whatever that you have to put in order to issue 100 DAI. So 300 Ether gives you 100 DAI. And this is another safety mechanism to absorb the volatility, or to be sure that the DAI that is in circulation is always backed by enough value behind. So if the price of Ether goes down, it would be allowed to go down almost 3 times, if it were 300%, before the DAI would be unbacked, before the DAI would not represent, its value will represent the value that were there before. Okay? So now I have DAI, and I have people that issued them and that can do something with CDP, which is margin trading. And what they will generally do is to sell DAI on the market. So now, for instance, could buy DAI and pay bills for a company or buy bread or whatever. Okay? Then, what can happen? So we start seeing stable coins that are supposed to be stable appearing on the market, and somehow Antonio and me will find them. Everything is normal, so there are people issuing and us buying them to use them, and it seems to be quite okay for now. It's stable. So in this period, which we called normal operations, all the people, so us using it and you maybe that issued it, will take advantage of what you can do with it, with the stablecoin and with the margin trading stuff. Okay? And what we have is this one. Okay? So this is the equilibrium. You'll have, say, Antonio is issuing through a CDP the DAI, and we are here hoping that because its value will always remain around the SDR price, that we can use it to pay our bills. So somebody that is issuing, opening a CDP to issue DAI, hopes to this option be attractive as well. I mean, why would I put money into this? You know, what's in it for me? Because I could leave it in the bank, or I could simply check what I can get from borrowing capital, for instance, on the market, which is a percentage. And if it's not as well as attractive as that, I wouldn't do it. So we have one first incentive here, which is a stability fee. So if everything remains stable, CDPs will remain open, and the DAI that has been issued will be used by the people, and I will keep getting exposure on my assets that I've locked in the system. And at the moment a position is closed, so I stop doing my trading, I want my Ether back from the system. If I do that, I'm going to have to pay a stability fee by putting more DAI to get the contract back. Because this goes both ways, right? You can put Ether or Bitcoin in the system and get DAI, but if you pay the system DAI back, then you can take the contract back as well and keep it for you. Okay? So when you close the position, you will have to pay the stability fee. So what is happening here? We're saying that people are issuing and I find it attractive, it's okay, and I keep issuing. Well, if more and more tokens are issued, it means that the supply of money is going to increase. And if the demand remains stable, we have a problem, because the supply is higher than the demand. And because of microeconomics, in this case, the price should go down. And the price shouldn't go down because we want it to be stable at all time. So we kind of have to do something here. And the way we correct the system, the way we are going to incentivize the price to go the other way around, is what we're going to see now. So if too many people issue DAI, the supply increase and the price will go down. So what we have to incentivize in this case is for people to take DAI out of circulation, like destroying DAI. There are too much DAI in circulation. And how do we do that? Without actually taking money from the people or burning money on the streets or whatever, is by an economic mechanism, incentives. So let's say the DAI is now lower, as I said, than what it should be, which is the target price. Well, for those who do a little bit of trading, this is something which is not very good, right? Because now that the price is lower, you're going to have to pay more DAI back to get your collateral back. Okay, and because the collateral is how many collateral you have to put in is calculated according to the target price, you're going to put more collateral than before when the price of the DAI was higher. So it's not a situation interesting for the people that want to issue DAI anymore. So what do? They tend to close it. And how does that work? We have a parameter, a new one here, which that is going to increase according to the difference between the DAI and the target price, which will increase the target price. So now what's going to happen is that the DAI is more expensive to generate, so that means it costs more. So this is not good for the people issuing DAI. So what they will do is hold it, wait, or to close their positions. And if they close the positions, they have to put DAI back to the system, and close it. So they remove DAI from circulation, which is what we want. But in that case, the supply of money will decrease. And when the supply of money decreases, the capital gains that you get from that asset are going to increase, and will incentivize the demand for that money. I think I have lost you. So this situation is not interesting for somebody willing to make money with the issuing part. But it is interesting for somebody that wants DAI like Sandra to pay a bit, because now it's cheaper. Right? So we combine two mechanisms, which is decrease the level of issuing up to a point where money is taken out of circulation, and we are incentivizing the demand with something with a lower price. So this will have the effect of increasing the price of the DAI, demand increases as well, up to a point where we come back to the target price, which is what we wanted. So we are back with economic incentives, we are back on where the price of stability is. Yeah, go ahead.
But if the target price is supposed to be marked at the same level as an exogenous price, how can they increase it or decrease it to stabilize the supply?
Yes, because the target price is a parameter that is used within the system to indicate where you want the system to go. And nobody is doing it. The system reacts to that kind of situation by setting the target price at a certain level. So that you change the incentives at the way you want the system to react. And in this case, we saw that what we want the system to do was to remove DAI from circulation. So you should make the borrowing DAI less attractive as a business. But the thing that is fixed and that you take from the outside world is the SDR, right? Which doesn't depend on Maker, which is external. It's a reference point of stability. And then you use the target price to say, okay, I have to be a little bit lower now to let the system react and adjust again. I have to put it down to let the system go down a little bit so that I get back on contract.
So you're varying around that target level, which is the exogenous one.
Exactly. You have your reference point of stability and you adjust the target price accordingly. Okay. The other scenario is the opposite, right? When I close a CDP, I do that because I want the Ether I put in, or the Bitcoin I put in, or I'm done with margin trading, thank you very much, and I want my money back. So what is happening in this case is that we have to pay the CDP some DAI back, pay the stability fee, of course, and then you could take a cut of all the CDP. So essentially, what is happening here is people exiting the system, like I'm gone. And by doing so, they destroy DAI. And the demand remains the same as before. In this case, the price of DAI should go up because you take DAI out of circulation, which means that money supplies will decrease, and demand will remain stable or increase, and have a misalignment. Okay, so the second incentive that is happening here is when somebody is exiting the system, the people that make sure, we see how later, that make sure that the DAI always remains stable, the MKR holders, are going to be paid a fee for closing this position. So through time, we saw before that the system was accumulating stability fee if everything remains stable. Well, if somebody decides to close a position, it is going to use that fee to buy MKR and burn it. What's that? A fee is normally something that I give you something in exchange for what you just done. No, here we are again using demand and supply of money to make this more incentive, more attractive. Sorry. And in this case, if you burn MKR, you're essentially reducing the supply of token. So each individual token is going to be worth a little bit more. This is basic economy. And so again, you have an incentive for the MKR holders that will see if everything goes right, that will always see an income of money from people using the system at their own advantages, and not by giving them like a commission or something, but by affecting the price of what they already hold, which is a token, in this case, the MKR. But if more and more people do that, so closing their positions, like I'm out of here, thank you very much, we also have the opposite problem as before. I won't get into it, but you get the idea. So if the price of the DAI is higher, it's interesting for the people that want to issue DAI. So what they tend to do is to keep their positions open or to issue more because it's profitable. But for the people that want to use DAI, not so much. So what you see is more DAI being issued through the CDP, which will again get back on the system. As we said before, what if the price of the collateral crashes? What if the Ether I put in or the Bitcoin I put in suddenly drop in value like 100% or 200%? Well, then I have a problem, right? Because the DAI that is supposed to be backed by something of value is no longer backed by things of value, by Ether with enough value. So it's like I have DAI in the market that are not worth what they should be worth any longer. And this cannot happen because somehow who wants to use that DAI is not trusting that it has enough value anymore to be used as a stable coin. So she will quit, I suppose. So in this case, we also have to do something. And this is again done in a decentralized fashion. And the way it's done is by responsibilizing the people that take decisions. And in this case, they are the MKR holders. So they made a bad thing, they accept I don't know, a token that they shouldn't have, or they let the system go the wrong direction, they didn't correct it, they didn't set the parameters the right way, so they should be punished, or there should be a consequence. And in this case, what's going to happen is that we are going to use the value that they own, which is the MKR, and we're going to dilute them. So we're going to use new MKR that the system can generate automatically, and we're going to issue more. And we're going to issue more because what is needed is burning DAI. We have to remove DAI from circulation because they are not backed by collateral, by enough collateral anymore. And so you raise enough DAI thanks to those tokens. Once you've got enough token raised, this is done, by the way, through a debt auction, so all a set of parameters and mechanism over there to buy DAI from circulation with new MKR. But what has happened is that kind of dilute MKR holders, so they lose more. And then once you have the DAI you need, you will automatically close the positions to remove DAI from circulation and get the collateral back. So the system gets the collateral back, and what it's going to do with that is to buy back MKR from the market. I know it's a bit strange, but stay with me. So it buys MKR back from the market and burn it again. So this is the opposite. This has the opposite effect as we've seen here, where we created MKR to buy DAI. But now what we're saying is that we use the DAI that we now have in the system. We get the collateral because we close the position, and we burn with the value there. We burn MKR to make the MKR increase a little bit in value. This can still, the net effect can still be negative. So MKR holders will still lose money. But with this system, a little bit less, or at least according to what is really needed to make the system balanced.
Also, in game theory terms speaking, if we create makers or MKR, we are actually punishing the makers. Because if we create more, each coin will lose its value. And if we burn, we will incentivize them, because each coin will have more value.
Exactly.
In game theory.
Sorry,
now speaking.
when you talk about burning maker or DAI, you're talking about burning cryptocurrencies that people are holding, or there is a reserve of these cryptocurrencies that will be burned?
No, you always buy stuff from the market. There is no, I own your private key of the token you hold. That is not ethical, and that should never happen. So you always buy tokens from the market. And then you burn it, and the way you burn, obviously you don't burn it, but the way it's done is by locking them in a smart contract that nobody can access. So it's like a dead end for a token.
But what's the incentive for burning them?
Well,
It's a way to affect the price of the remaining tokens.
Yeah, but like as a user of the network.
you have actually two tokens. So they have the DAI and their MKR. And the DAI has to be stable all the time. And to have this happen, the makers that are behind the MKR, these are the holders, they get all the incentive if they do a good job. So if the DAI is always stable, they get all the fees. And they can make the DAI stable if they do a good governance job, because they have chosen the right tokens and so on. But if they do a wrong job or a bad job, then the DAI will lose its value. It will go up or down. And then they have to lose money, or they have to stand up. And as he said, in this sense, in this moment, they have to create new makers to buy them back. And so they will lose money. So it's like the MKR is all the brutality, and the DAI is all the stability of one coin in itself. It's actually split into coins. And what is so special about this is, in comparison to the centralized world we are living right now, is the makers that are making the decisions are also those that have the risk. So if they make bad decisions, they will lose their own money because they have to react.
Yeah.
But you use the makers to get back your collateral, right?
No. The way you get your collateral back is by paying your open position, your CDP, with DAI. So there are really two kinds of people here. The one that want to see this as a business, and what they will want is to borrow DAI and sell it on the market. And then you have the other kind of people who are the ones that just want a stablecoin and don't care about all that thing.
So then why are you increasing the MKR supply?
So you mean in the case, this one, when you would create new accounts? Well, it's in the special circumstances where the LDR owners took a bad decision, or they didn't take the appropriate decisions the wrong way, and they let the system evolve in an unstable point. And in this case, to correct automatically that lack of stability, the fact that the price of the DAI is higher than what it should be, then you use LDR to correct that instability.
No, but I was like asking the actual system of how MKR corrects the system. Like what's the mechanism?
It's a smart contract that will issue new tokens. So imagine like in every other project where you have a token, you have a function that can issue new coins or not. It depends on the rules you've established. In this case, that function exists, and so you can issue new tokens when it's required. Okay. So I know. So I know it's been rough. As I said, you have two kinds of people. You can see this as a business, and you will then put money in to issue DAI and sell it on the market. And then you have the other kind, which is I just want a stable coin. And those guys and girls just need to believe and trust that there is an infrastructure that is there with enough value to make the system, make the coin stable at all times. And you can have two different scenarios, or basic scenarios, the normal operations and black swan events, would be like an extreme, exactly, when the price of the collateral crashes. So what we want to do now is to have an interview with Rowan Christensen, who is the founder of MakerDAO, and he's a technical guy, but we're going to ask him questions less technical, I would say, in order to understand a little bit better. Are there other questions?
No, in the beginning he asked if the Ether price crashed overnight.
Yes, but I still like to. Do you still have that same question, or now that I have explained the scenario where the price of Ether crashed?
I'm more
kind of
just
see.
grasp the idea, but it's very complicated, but just put it to us, so if you can go over it, it would be great.
Yeah.
We can ask Ruben again.
Yeah, we can ask Ruben. Ask him.
Yeah, let's ask Ruben because we get more.
All right.
Yes, go ahead.
Got one rather simple question. You said that you're fixing it to the SDR. The SDR, as far as I know, I just checked it, I think it's fixed for 5 years. So basically, if you're paying in Europe with your new cyber currency or cryptocurrency, you pay it with an exchange rate which represents the current 5 years ago exchange rate from dollar to euro to yen to pound. But this is basically fluctuating all the time compared to your euro. Because the euro to the dollar changes every day, and it's not fixed for 5 years like the SDR.
I know. It's a matter of finding the best compromise, I guess. I mean, Because what all other projects, and we haven't talked about other projects that also do stablecoins, what they do is to peg the price of their stablecoin to the dollar, to the euro, and whatever. But this only reflects what is true or what is right according to where you live. If you're trying to make something available worldwide, whatever the economy, you kind of have to make compromise about what stability means to you. And they chose SDR to be the best thing, the best indicator of the world economy. If something better comes up, they switch to something else. But so far, it's what they decided to do. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
All right. Excellent.
Maybe you can show him the audience.
Show him the audience.
I can't because I don't have it.
Yeah, but turn it.
Oh, sorry, we can't show you the audience, but there are a lot of people here.
That's not
Follow you out of Thailand.
Okay.
So we kind of understood, I hope, the basics of Maker by the presentation we just did, and maybe as a starting point, you could emphasize what you think is going to be the long-term vision for Maker in the blockchain space, and why are stablecoins so important?
So I think that there are two main pros we want to go down here over the next period. And so first of all is we want to really see our system integrated with as many centralized exchanges as possible. So both using DAI for margin trade, other cryptocurrencies, and then also using DAI as a stablecoin inside exchanges to really create this high liquidity environment that blockchain technology has the potential to create. And then the second thing is we want to grow decentralized exchanges. And we are preparing ourselves with what we call Oasis, this decentralized exchange. But also what we want to do is empower the other decentralized exchanges, both by enabling margin trading on their platforms and also making it easier for people to trade across decentralized exchanges. So generally, we see Maker being efforts for really increased liquidity in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, as well as just more access to credit and more money available, basically.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but we can do another way. Okay. Thanks. So, but in the end, right? If we'd like to use cryptocurrency to do everyday activities, or like paying bills or buy stuff from the market or whatever, is there not a use case or a lack of technology or product that you think make fit in somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, especially, obviously, this is longer term. This is after we already have a growing revenue system. But at some point, it should be possible to use the DAI stablecoin on a large scale in like Venezuela or other places where their own currency is so reliable and they have issues with hyperinflation and just like bad monetary policy. And there's going to be really life-saving for regular people who have this kind of financial network they can tap into to get money, basically, which is really what we just want to achieve, right? We just want to make it easier for everyone to be more simple.
So you really have to focus on two kinds of people here. The one that want to see stablecoin as a business, and then the other groups will see stablecoin as a token they can rely on to do their everyday activities. And how do you combine in your way the incentives from the two groups in one same product?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's actually, I think that's an incredibly hard problem because to some extent, people who right now have access to monetary and financial systems that just work really well already, like some European countries, right, like America, or whatever, like the States and other things. It's going to be extremely difficult to compete with the incumbent currency on total liability, credibility. And actually, in some ways, we're prepared to not even try to do that. And instead, what we want to do in those kind of places is we can basically offer like a digital version of our own currency. So something like a digital stablecoin or digital euro. These currencies then be backed by DAO on top of the back, but actually invisible to the regular user. This is something we have like ready to deploy already now, actually, because we have decided to contracts our prototype stablecoin that's good. It's actually pegged to $1, and we basically build technology after we do then on combining the currency peg and then also the advanced features the full makers include.
Okay, but so talking about stability, we had a question from the audience. Why pick SDR as your reference point of stability, where in some places in the world you might not see SDR as something interesting, or there might be other options for you to pick as a reference point. Why do you think this is the most appropriate reference point of stability for a worldwide economy?
Yeah, so first of all, we don't actually want to pick SDR. So SDR is not the optimal solution to what we need, but it's the closest solution at this point. And that's because SDR is a diversified basket of many existing currencies. And these currencies are all very stable, like the US dollar. I mean, many people often mention that obviously we shouldn't use peg the US dollar because they trust the dollar, right? There's also like euro is also well trusted, like all these other currencies basically together they represent a relatively robust currency index. However, we are pretty convinced that it's actually optimal and it should be possible to make an even better index than what the IMF is doing. And that's going to be some of that long-term research goal to create something.
Okay. And then, getting down to the actual system. I'm not a trader myself, and I know not a lot about that. But margin trading, it's always something that I didn't see as a very secure. Right? You should know what you do to get into this. So, relying the system, the stability, the stability mechanisms around margin trading, isn't that the best way to screw it up, basically? Or can you explain why it's not the case, actually?
Yeah, I mean, so that's actually a very good point. And I think, first of all, it is just the case that margin trading, and that's kind of like advanced credit, traditionally, it's always highly regulated stuff. And that's because all the governments know that we can't let this stuff. Like, you can't give regular people to sort of lenient access to this kind of stuff. But basically, ultimately, there's actually no way you can create, like, you want something that's more stable than this index, right? Like, you want something that's as stable as an existing fiat currency. You can only really arrive at that through, like, a debt mechanism, basically, because that's the only way where you get control actively, which is kind of what you want to manipulate super life speed and I mean, basically, in some way you can say the net stability of the system is not really positive. Like, really what the system does is that it like separates the stability up from the volatilities, right? And like accentuate it in both sides. So there's more stability that can be used as currency, and then there's more volatility in all the leverage positions. And basically, the existing financial system already works exactly like this. And what we're actually doing is similar to that. With the one big advantage is that our system is more transparent with it. So while there is this absolute risk, and this like it's not like magically creates people don't know. But what we do have is we have this really holistic overview of exactly how our system is being used, and it should be easier because of that to make it differently. And that's also where the API is. The whole point of this system is that there are a lot of people who put a lot of their own money at stake on sort of the task of setting the rules for the system and then taking the loss if they fail and set the problem.
But as a user, as a basic user that just want a stablecoin, what do I have to do in order to trust Maker that MPR holders and all the participants there are doing what they're supposed to do to get to always get back to the equilibrium? Do I have to trust somebody, or can I look at something somewhere in order to make sure that everything is still stable and everything runs smoothly? Or do I have to trust something or somebody?
I mean, obviously the ideal answer is you just look at the code and you're like, understand how the system works. But I think like for regular people, I'm guessing this is going to be a question of track record. Right? If we can show that side, for instance, our stablecoin has remained at one USD and per year for multiple without problems, same with our we can show like over a longer period that the system has functioned, and also can show things like real world cases where there have been crashes or instability that will then solve resistance mechanisms by bridging and inflating it, those kind of the more advanced cryptocurrency mechanisms that automatically try to counter any of these issues.
Okay.
But ultimately, it's it's just very similar to the existing financial system, and it is kind of some of the same thing right where like, the only reason why it's not currency now is because it just worked so long and it's worked well that there's no reason to assume that tomorrow dollars and euros will be completed.
Well, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to leave it here. I don't know why we've got so bad connection, but it's a bit difficult to hear you out loud. But thank you very much, Rune, for being with us tonight. Again, we did our best to explain MakerDAO to this audience. I hope they understood at least the idea and the simple mechanics behind. And we're going to keep doing what we can and answering questions. But best of luck for the project, and I hope to see the DAI available on the market very soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And